I often wonder what draws us to the wild places of the earth, places like Yellowstone National Park with its steaming geysers and sprawling forests. But what if I told you that the very heart of nature can hide secrets darker than the shadowy pines at dusk? Hi, I'm Dorian Ashcroft, a park ranger with a passion for the untamed beauty of the outdoors. Yet there came a time when I realized that some paths are better left untrodden. My story begins on a seemingly ordinary day, one that would forever alter my relationship with these majestic lands. It was late September, and the air was crisp with the promise of autumn. I was stationed at the Mammoth Hot Springs, a place where nature's artistry is on full display. But as I patrolled the winding trails, I felt an unsettling tension that prickled at the back of my mind. I had heard whispers among the locals in Gardner, Montana, tales of things that lurked just beyond the edges of the park. Strange sightings, inexplicable disappearances, stories that felt more like urban legends than reality. Yet, the more I listened, the more those tales began to weave themselves into the fabric of my thoughts. On that fateful day, while I was guiding a small group of tourists through the steaming terraces, something caught my eye. It was a figure, just a silhouette, standing at the edge of the woods. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of the light, but the longer I stared, the more it felt like something was watching us. I shivered, brushing off the chill that ran down my spine. My heart raced, and I quickly turned back to the group, forcing a smile as I recounted the wonders of the springs. But the unease lingered, gnawing at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something unusual was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, I decided to investigate further. I wandered off the beaten path, drawn by an instinct I couldn't quite explain. The deeper I ventured into the woods, the more the sounds of the park faded, leaving only an oppressive silence that seemed to swallow even the rustle of leaves. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a clearing, and there it was, a weathered cabin, half hidden by the encroaching underbrush. The wooden structure was dilapidated, its windows dark and hollow like empty eyes. A sense of dread washed over me, but curiosity propelled me forward. What had brought someone to this forsaken place? As I approached, I noticed strange symbols carved into the doorframe, symbols I had never seen before. They seemed to pulse, with a life of their own, drawing me in closer. I hesitated, memories of my childhood flooding back. I grew up in a small town in Idaho, where tales of the supernatural were common among the campfire stories. My grandfather had spoken of places where the veil between our world and something darker was thin, where the spirits of the land could both protect and curse the unwary traveler. I had always brushed those stories aside, but now, standing before this cabin, I could feel the weight of those words pressing down on me. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and just as I reached for the door, a low growl echoed through the oak trees. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see a pair of eyes glowing in the darkness. They were unlike anything I had ever encountered, intelligent, predatory, and filled with an ancient malice that sent me stumbling backward. I ran, sprinting back through the underbrush, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I desperately sought the safety of the park's well-trodden trails. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake in my cabin, replaying the events over and over, the growl reverberating in my mind. I knew I couldn't ignore what I had experienced. I had to understand what was happening in my beloved Yellowstone. As a ranger, it was my duty to protect both the park and its visitors, but now I felt like I was the one in need of protection. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself drawn back to the cabin, despite the fear that gripped my heart. Each time I returned, the forest seemed to shift around me, as if it were alive and aware of my presence. The symbols on the doorframe began to haunt my dreams, twisting into unfamiliar shapes, whispering secrets I couldn't grasp. The more I uncovered, the more I felt an invisible thread connecting my past to the strange occurrences in the park. But it was one fateful night when everything changed. I was unable to shake the feeling of being watched, the oppressive silence of the woods closing in around me. I had set out to gather more information, determined to confront whatever darkness lurked beyond the cabin's door. But when night fell, something inexplicable happened. As I stood at the threshold of that forsaken cabin, a chill swept through the air, wrapping around me like a shroud. The forest held its breath, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon me, their gaze penetrating the darkness. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. With a trembling hand, I pushed open the door, the creaking sound echoing in the oppressive silence. Inside, the air was stale and heavy, laden with the scent of decay. Flickering shadows danced across the walls as I fished my flashlight from my pocket, illuminating the room. Dust motes floated lazily in the beam of light, and the remnants of a long-abandoned life surrounded me. An overturned chair, a small table with a broken leg, and a fireplace choked with ashes. But it was the walls that captivated me, plastered with cryptic drawings and symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. As I stepped further into the cabin, I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of fear and exhilaration. I was no longer just a park ranger. I was an explorer delving into the unknown. The thrill of discovery coursed through my veins, but so did an undercurrent of dread. What had happened here? Before I could contemplate further, a sudden crash from the back of the cabin made me jump. My heart raced as I turned toward the sound, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the darkness. I approached cautiously, every muscle in my body tense, prepared for anything. It was then I spotted the source of the noise, a figure hunched over a makeshift table, rifling through a pile of old papers. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice stronger than the fear clawing at my insides. The figure froze, then slowly turned to face me. It was a woman, her face illuminated by my flashlight. Her hair was wild and tangled, her clothes dirty and worn, yet there was a spark in her eyes, an intensity that made me hesitate. "Dorian Ashcroft, right?" she said, her voice low and steady. "I've been waiting for you." "Who are you?" I asked, tightening my grip on the flashlight, unsure if I should feel relief or apprehension. "My name is Alara," she replied, brushing her hair away from her face. "I know what you're searching for. You've felt it too, haven't you? The darkness in these woods?" My mind raced. "What do you know about it?" Alara took a step closer, and I could see the shadows under her eyes, the weariness etched into her features. "I've been tracking it for months. It's not just a legend. There's something ancient here, something that preys on those who wander too far from the path. I saw the same figure you did, the one that watches from the trees." I felt a chill run through me. Had she seen the creature too? "You've seen it? What is it?" Her eyes darkened, and she glanced back at the door as if expecting the figure to emerge from the shadows. "I don't know for sure. Some call it a guardian, others call it a monster, but it's tied to this place, to the symbols on the walls. It's a warning and a curse." The weight of her words pressed down on me, igniting a spark of fear mixed with curiosity. "How do you know all this?" Alara hesitated, her gaze flickering to the scattered papers on the table. "Because I lost someone here. My brother went missing last year, and the last place he was seen was near this cabin. I've been searching for answers ever since." The emotional gravity of her revelation hit me like a punch. I had dedicated my life to protecting these lands, but I had never experienced loss like that. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I can't imagine what you've been through." "Don't pity me," she snapped, a fire igniting in her eyes. "I need your help, Dorian. Together we can uncover the truth about what's happening in these woods. But you have to promise me you won't turn back." I felt the pull of her desperation, the intensity of her quest igniting something within me. I had always believed in the beauty and serenity of nature, but now I was faced with its darker side. "Okay," I said, my voice steadying. "I'll help you. but we need to be careful. As we began to sift through the papers scattered across the table, I felt a storm of emotions brewing within me. The thrill of adventure surged alongside the weight of responsibility. But I also sensed a deeper connection forming between us, one forged by shared loss and determination. "What do these symbols mean?" I asked, pointing to one that resembled the one etched into the cabin door. Elara leaned closer, her brow furrowing, in concentration. "They're part of an ancient language, one that speaks of the balance between nature and the forces that seek to disrupt it. This place is sacred, but something has disturbed that balance, and it's restless." My mind spun, with possibilities. The stories I had heard, the disappearances, could they all be linked to whatever darkness Elara was speaking of? "What's our next move?" I asked, suddenly feeling a sense of urgency. "We need to go back to where I first saw the figure," she said, her voice steady, but laced with tension. "There's something there, a relic or a clue that could lead us to the truth. But we have to be cautious. It won't just let us walk in unscathed." I nodded, adrenaline coursing through my veins. This wasn't just about the park anymore. It was about uncovering the secrets that lay hidden in its heart. And as we prepared to leave the cabin, the weight of my choices settled heavily on my shoulders. As we stepped back into the night, the forest loomed around us, alive with sounds, both familiar and foreign. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, but I could feel the pull of destiny urging me forward. Together, Elara and I ventured deeper into the unknown, our resolve hardening with each step. But little did I know the challenges we faced would test not only our courage, but also our very understanding of what it meant to belong to a world that thrived on both beauty and darkness. And as the shadows deepened, I could sense that whatever awaited us would change everything. I thought I knew about the wild places of the earth. With each heartbeat echoing in the stillness, we moved forward into the depths of the forest, unaware of the dangers that lay in wait and the truths that would unravel before us. The darkness was alive, and I was determined to confront it, no matter the cost. As we pushed deeper into the forest, the air thickened around us, heavy with an unnameable tension. The trees loomed tall and foreboding, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers reaching into the starless sky. Each step felt like a descent into a different realm, one where reality began to blur and distort. Elara walked ahead, her silhouette barely distinguishable against the darkness. I caught up with her, feeling the surge of adrenaline and fear that fueled my every move. "What did you see?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the unease gnawing at my insides. "When you first encountered that figure," she paused, her breath catching in her throat as she turned to face me. "It was like nothing I've ever seen. It stood there watching me, its eyes. They weren't like a person's. They were ancient, filled with a knowledge that shouldn't exist in this world." Her voice trembled, and for a moment I saw the cracks in her brave facade. I nodded, trying to process her words. "And you think it has something to do with your brother's disappearance?" Elara's gaze drifted to the ground, her hands trembling as she clenched them into fists. "He was drawn to the forest, just like I was. I warned him, but he thought he could handle it. He said he felt a calling, a connection. I didn't understand then, but I do now." She looked up, her eyes fierce. "This place has a way of pulling you in, of making you believe you belong here until it doesn't want you anymore." The weight of her words settled heavily in the air, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. I had always admired the forest. It had been my sanctuary, a place of solace. But now I was beginning to see it through a different lens, one tainted by fear and uncertainty. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the shadows were alive and whispering secrets that I wasn't meant to hear. My thoughts began to spiral as I recalled my own past, those long nights spent alone in the park's depths, seeking solace in the embrace of nature. There had been times when I'd felt a connection, a calling to the wilderness that felt almost spiritual. What if that connection was more sinister than I'd ever imagined? Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the trees and I froze. "Did you hear that?" Ilara nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to keep moving." We continued, the tension escalating with every step. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a primal instinct urging me to flee. But I couldn't abandon her, not after everything she'd shared. I was in this now, whether I liked it or not. Eventually, we reached a clearing where the moonlight broke through the canopy, illuminating a small altar-like structure made of stone. It was covered in the same cryptic symbols that adorned the walls of the cabin, pulsating softly, as if alive. My breath caught in my throat. "This is it," Ilara whispered, stepping closer to the altar. "This is where I saw the figure." I followed her, my eyes scanning the area. "What do we do now?" Ilara knelt before the altar, tracing the symbols with her fingers. "I think we need to activate it somehow. These markings, they're part of a ritual. If we can uncover the truth, maybe we can find out what happened to my brother." As she spoke, I felt an inexplicable pull toward the altar, an urge to touch the stone. I reached out, my fingertips brushing against the cool surface. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through me, like electricity zapping through my veins. I gasped, stumbling back. "Dorian!" Ilara cried, eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay?" I shook my head, trying to clear the fog that had settled over my thoughts. "I don't know. Something just happened." "Stay back," she warned, but it was too late. The symbols on the altar flared to life, casting an eerie glow that pulsed, in rhythm with my heartbeat. The air around us crackled with energy, and I felt a force tugging at my mind, whispering secrets I was not ready to hear. And then the figure emerged from the shadows. It was cloaked in darkness, its form shifting and undulating like smoke. I could barely make out its features, but those ancient eyes locked onto mine, piercing through the veil of my sanity. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. Was this real, or was I losing my grip on reality? "Dorian!" Ilara screamed, but the sound seemed distant, muffled by the growing cacophony in my head. Visions flashed before me, memories I had buried deep, traumas I had tried to forget. My father's voice, harsh and unforgiving, my mother's tears as she watched me slip away into nature's embrace. I had always sought refuge in the forest, but now I realized it had been an escape from my own demons. The figure began to take form, revealing a face I recognized all too well. It was my brother, lost to the wilderness, his expression twisted in anguish. "Dorian," he said, his voice echoing like a haunting refrain. "You shouldn't have come here." I felt my heart race, panic rising within me. "What do you mean? Are you real?" Ilara grabbed my arm, her voice urgent. "It's a trick. Don't listen to it." But the darkness was strong, urging me to step forward, to embrace the truth I had long avoided. "Is this what happened to you? Did you get lost in the forest too?" I asked, my voice trembling. My brother's figure grew fainter, his eyes filled with sadness. "I was searching, just like you. I thought I could find the answers, but the forest, it consumes those who seek what shouldn't be found." I felt the ground shift beneath me, the symbols on the altar swirling in a chaotic dance. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I was not just here to help Ilara find her brother. I was on a collision course with my own past, a reckoning I had long avoided. The truth wasn't just about the darkness in these woods, it was about the darkness inside me. "Dorian, snap out of it!" Ilara shouted, shaking me from my reverie. "We have to leave, now!" But I couldn't move. The figure of my brother continued to fade, replaced by the shadows that whispered secrets I was not ready to hear. I was being pulled in two directions, toward the truth of my past and the danger that lurked in the depths of the forest. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gasped, clutching my heart. The darkness around us intensified, and I realized it was feeding off my fear, my unresolved trauma. I looked at Ilara, desperation flooding my senses. "I can't," and then everything went black. When I came to, I found myself lying on the forest floor, the altar a distant memory. Ilora was beside me, her eyes wide with concern. "Dorian, are you okay? You collapsed." I blinked, trying to regain my bearings. The weight of what I had just experienced crashed down on me, and I felt the walls of my sanity begin to crumble. I saw him, Ilora. I saw my brother. Her expression shifted, a mix of understanding and fear. What did he say? I shook my head, my thoughts a whirlwind. He warned me, warned us. This place is more than we thought. It's not just about your brother. It's about something deeper, something that ties us all together. Ilora's face paled as she processed my words. Then, we have to find a way to stop it. But how? We need to figure out what we're truly dealing with. I took a deep breath, the weight of the forest pressing down on me. We need to dig deeper into the past, into the stories that shape this place. There's more to this than we know, and if we're going to confront it, we need to uncover every hidden truth. With renewed determination, we rose to our feet, the shadows still swirling around us, but now imbued with a sense of purpose. Whatever awaited us in the depths of the forest, we would face it together. And as we set off once more, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was not just out there in the woods, it was within us, waiting to be unleashed. The journey ahead would not only test our courage, but also the very fabric of our souls, as we sought to uncover the secrets of the forest and the truth of ourselves. The night stretched on, and with each step the tension mounted, leading us deeper into the heart of the mystery that awaited. Little did we know, the revelations to come would shake the foundation of everything we thought we knew. As we stepped back into the oppressive darkness, the forest seemed to close in around us, the trees shifting and whispering secrets. The air had thickened, heavy with an unease that clung to my skin like a second layer. I could still feel the remnants of that vision, the figure of my brother, the haunting echo of his warning. It pulsed in my mind, a relentless drumbeat that urged me forward while simultaneously holding me captive to my fears. Ilora walked beside me, her resolve hardening with each step. I could see the determination in her eyes, but there was also a flicker of doubt, a silent question lingering between us. How much more could we uncover before it consumed us whole? The tension hung thick, and I felt its weight shifting, like the forest itself was alive, watching us with a predatory gaze. "What if we don't find the answers we seek?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, as we navigated the twisting path. Ilora glanced at me, her expression resolute. "Then we adapt. We can't let fear dictate our actions." I nodded, but her words didn't fully assuage my growing anxiety. I had always prided myself on being brave, on facing the unknown head-on, but this was different. This was a confrontation with my own buried truths, with the shadows that had lingered in my past. As we continued deeper into the forest, the underbrush thickened, making our progress slow and laborious. The murmur of the wind through the trees sounded almost like whispers, taunting us with secrets we were not yet ready to uncover. I could feel the weight of the symbols from the altar still pressing against my mind, an echo of ancient knowledge that felt both alluring and terrifying. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, a sound primal and filled with warning. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing as I scanned the darkness. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. Ilora nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "We need to move. Whatever that is, it's not friendly." We quickened our pace, the growl now replaced by a rustling sound, something large moving through the underbrush. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but I couldn't abandon Ilora. Not now, not after everything we had faced together. "What if it's just an animal?" I suggested, trying to inject a sense of calm into our escalating panic. But deep down, I felt the truth. The forest was no longer just a place of refuge. It was an entity unto itself, a labyrinth of danger that thrived on our fears. We stumbled into a small clearing, our breaths coming in quick gasps. Moonlight spilled onto the ground, illuminating a series of stones arranged in a circle, each marked with the same cryptic symbols we had seen at the altar. My heart sank as I recognized their significance. "This is another ritual site," I said, dread pooling in my stomach. Elara knelt, tracing the symbols with trembling fingers. "What does it mean? Do you think it's connected to what we saw?" Before I could respond, the growling returned, closer this time, and I felt a primal instinct take over. We had to decide, fight or flee. I glanced around, searching for a weapon, anything to defend ourselves. "We need to find something to protect ourselves," I said, my voice low. Elara stood abruptly, her eyes scanning the tree line. "You think we can fight whatever's out there?" I hesitated, the primal fear clawing at my insides. "I don't know, but we can't just wait for it to come to us. We need to be prepared." As if on cue, a massive shape broke through the underbrush, a dark silhouette that loomed menacingly in the shadows. My breath hitched in my throat. It was unlike any animal I had ever seen, its eyes glinting with an intelligence that sent a shiver down my spine. A low growl rumbled from its throat, vibrating through the ground beneath us. "Back away slowly," Elara whispered, her voice shaky but steady. I could see the fear in her eyes, mirrored in my own. The creature stepped forward, its form shifting, and I recognized the features, almost human, yet distorted, as if the forest itself had twisted it into something unrecognizable. It was a manifestation of everything we had encountered, a physical embodiment of the darkness that dwelled within the forest. "Dorian!" Elara hissed, snapping me from my trance. "We need to run!" We turned to flee, but the creature lunged, blocking our path. In that moment, instinct kicked in. I grabbed a fallen branch, brandishing it like a weapon, though my hands trembled. "Stay behind me," I shouted, feeling an odd sense of defiance rise within me. Elara's eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "Buy us time," I replied, my heart racing. "We have to find a way to escape." The creature snarled, a guttural sound that sent chills through my bones. It lunged again, and I swung the branch with all my might. The impact echoed through the clearing, but it barely registered. The creature staggered back, its eyes narrowing in anger. "Now!" I shouted, grabbing Elara's arm. We darted to the side, weaving through the trees, adrenaline surging as we raced into the depths of the forest. The growls faded behind us, but I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in, urging me to look back, to confront what we had awakened. But the choice was clear. Survival came first. As we ran, I felt the forest shifting around us, the trees closing in, branches clawing at my skin as if to pull me back. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that uncovering. The truth would come at a steep price. "Where are we going?" Elara gasped, struggling to keep pace. "Anywhere but here," I replied, despair creeping into my voice. "We need to find another way out, a place to regroup." But my mind was racing, caught in a web of uncertainty and fear. The encounter had shattered the fragile facade I had built, and now I could feel the darkness swirling around me, a storm of unresolved pain and trauma. We stumbled upon another clearing, this one larger, and as we entered, I caught a glimpse of something glimmering in the moonlight. It was a stone archway, intricately carved and covered in the same symbols that had haunted us. A sense of déjà vu washed over me. I realized this must be a threshold of sorts, a gateway to something unknown. "Elara, look," I pointed, urgency in my voice. "Maybe this is a way out, or at least a place to hide." As we approached, the air crackled with energy, pulsing in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I felt the pull again, that inexplicable draw toward the archway, but with it came the weight of fear, the fear of what lay beyond, the fear of the truths we were about to confront. "What if this is a trap?" Elara asked, her voice laced with apprehension. I turned to her, my heart heavy with the choices we faced. "We need to decide. We can keep running, but that won't solve anything. Or we can step through and face whatever lies ahead." The tension hung thick in the air, and I could see the conflict in Elara's eyes. I understood her fear, but I also knew that to uncover the truth we had to embrace the darkness. Together, I said, gripping her hand tightly. We face it together. With a deep breath, we stepped forward, crossing the threshold. The world shifted around us, and as we entered the archway, I realized we were no longer just running from the shadows. We were stepping into the heart of the mystery, and with that decision, I felt the darkness surge, ready to unveil its secrets as we plunged into the unknown, unsure of what awaited us on the other side, but knowing that whatever it was, we would face it together. The forest held its breath, and as the moon cast its light upon our path, I understood. The danger was far from over, and the revelations that awaited us would test not only our courage, but the very bonds that held us together. We crossed the threshold of the stone archway, the world around us transformed. The oppressive darkness of the forest receded, replaced by a shimmering twilight that felt both ethereal and unsettling. The air was cool, tinged with an unfamiliar sweetness, yet beneath it lay a tension that prickled at my skin. I could sense we were no longer just in the forest. We had stepped into a realm that existed in the space between realities, a place where the rules of nature twisted and turned like the branches of the trees that had once surrounded us. Ilara squeezed my hand tightly, her breath hitching as she took in our surroundings. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and trepidation. I could hardly find my voice. "I don't know," I admitted, my eyes scanning the horizon. The landscape seemed to pulse, alive with a strange energy. The ground beneath us was covered in a soft moss that glimmered faintly, illuminated by a light that appeared to come from nowhere, yet suffused everything in a soft glow. As we stepped further in, the archway behind us shimmered, a portal that felt both inviting and ominous. I turned to look back, half expecting the creature to lunge through in pursuit, but it stayed behind, as if held at bay by some invisible barrier. A shiver ran down my spine. What had we unleashed by stepping into this unknown? "Look," Ilara pointed ahead, where the glimmering light coalesced into a figure. It was tall and slender, draped in robes that appeared to be spun from the same luminous threads that filled the air around us. The figure's face was obscured, hidden beneath a hood, but the presence radiated an ancient wisdom, a sense of knowing that sent a wave of both fear and curiosity coursing through me. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. The figure remained silent, but I could feel the weight of its gaze as if it were assessing us, weighing our intentions. "You seek answers," the figure finally spoke, the voice smooth and melodic, yet laced with an authority that made my heart race. "But be warned, the truths you uncover may change you forever." Ilara stepped forward, her resolve shining through the fear. "We need to know what happened to my brother. We need to understand the darkness in this forest." The figure raised a hand and the air shimmered, revealing images swirling like smoke. I saw glimpses of my past, my brother, laughing in the sunlight, and then the shadows creeping in, distorting his smile. I felt a surge of regret and longing. I had only ever wanted to protect him, and yet I had failed. "You cannot change the past, but you can confront it," the figure said, its voice echoing with the weight of fate. "The darkness you fear is not just in the forest. It resides within you. To find the truth, you must face your deepest fears." The images shifted, and I saw Ilara's face, her eyes reflecting the same pain I felt. I understood then that this journey was not just about my brother. It was about us, about the shadows we both carried. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure gestured again, and the air rippled, revealing a scene of the forest from before. I saw the altar, the symbols, and the dark creature that had chased us. I felt the fear clenching my heart, a visceral reminder of how close we had come to being consumed. "You must confront the entity that haunts you. Only then can you find peace?" Ilara's voice broke through my thoughts. "How do we confront it? It's too powerful." The figure turned toward her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something, compassion. Strength lies not in power, but in understanding. The creature is a reflection of your fears, of your unresolved past. To face it, you must first face yourselves. I felt the weight of those words. There was a truth there that resonated within me. The creature was not just a monster. It was a manifestation of everything I had buried: the guilt, the shame, the fear of failure. I turned to Elora, seeing the same realization dawning in her eyes. We had to confront not only the creature, but the darkness within ourselves. Before I could voice my thoughts, the air shifted again. The ground trembled beneath us, and the figure stepped back, its form fading into the shimmer. "The time has come," it said, its voice now distant. "You must choose. Face the entity or remain in the shadows." A surge of energy filled the air, and I felt the ground beneath us crack, the archway beginning to shimmer once more. "Ilara, we have to make a choice," I shouted over the rising wind. "We can't stay here." Ilara nodded, determination etched on her face. "Together," she said again, and I could see the fire in her eyes. "Whatever happens, we face it together." As the ground shook, the shimmering light coalesced into the familiar shape of the dark creature, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. It stood between us and the archway, a barrier that threatened to cut off our escape. In that moment, I felt a surge of fear, but it was accompanied by a newfound resolve. We had come too far to turn back now. "Let's do this," I said, gripping Elara's hand tighter. The creature snarled, and I could feel its primal energy radiating through the air, an echo of our fears. We stepped forward, drawing on the courage that had brought us this far. The creature lunged, and I felt the weight of its darkness pressing against me, but I held my ground. "You cannot control me," I shouted, feeling the power of my own voice. Elara stepped beside me, her presence grounding me. "We are not afraid," she declared, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. "We will not let you define us." The creature hesitated, the growl faltering for just a moment, as if our defiance had pierced through its dark facade. I seized the opportunity, letting the energy of our shared resolve surge through me. "We are more than our fears," I cried, and in that instant, I felt the shadows within me begin to unravel. Light erupted from within me, intertwining with Elara's strength as we faced the creature together. It recoiled, the darkness swirling around it beginning to fade. The symbols from the altar pulsed with life, illuminating the clearing, and I felt the weight of the truth descending upon us. "You are not alone," I shouted, my voice echoing through the shimmering landscape. "We are the light in this darkness." The creature roared, a sound filled with rage and confusion, as if it could not comprehend the power we had summoned. The darkness around it began to dissipate, revealing the truth beneath the terror. I saw flickers of my brother's face, the pain and anguish that had once consumed him, and I understood now that this creature was a part of him, a reflection of the trauma he had faced. "Ilara, hold on," I urged, feeling the connection between us strengthen as we stood against the tide of darkness. "We can break this cycle." Together, we advanced, our hands clasped tightly, and I felt the energy swirling around us, a cyclone of light and resolve. The creature snarled, but we pressed on, fueled by the love and determination to free my brother from the shadows that had held him captive for so long. "Together," we shouted in unison, and with one final push, we unleashed the light within, us crashing against the dark creature like a wave against a cliff. The roar of the creature echoed through the clearing, a sound filled with anguish, but also the promise of release. As the light enveloped us, I felt the darkness dissipating, unraveling the fear that had bound us for so long. The creature writhed, its form shifting and contorting, until with one final echoing cry, it shattered, exploding into 1,000 shimmering motes of light that danced in the air before vanishing. The clearing fell silent, the tension evaporating like mist in the morning sun. I turned to Ilara, our eyes wide with disbelief. "Did we do it?" I whispered, hope blooming in my chest. "I think so," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "But at what cost?" I looked around, the remnants of the dark creature's presence fading into the air. The archway still shimmered behind us, a reminder of the journey we had taken. but as I took a deep breath, I felt lighter. The shadows within me that had once threatened to consume me had been faced and for the moment conquered. But I also knew this was just the beginning. The forest still held secrets, and my brother's fate was still uncertain. Together, we had faced the darkness, but the path ahead was still shrouded in mystery. "Let's keep going," I said, glancing back at the archway, knowing we had to continue our journey to uncover the truth. "There's still so much to learn." Elara nodded, her determination rekindled. "Together," she affirmed, and I felt a renewed strength in our bond. As we stepped away from the remnants of our confrontation, I understood that the darkness would always be a part of us. But now we were armed with the light of our shared courage, ready to face whatever lay ahead, entwined in the mysteries of the forest and the truths that awaited us on the other side. As the last echoes of the creature's roar faded into the stillness, I felt an overwhelming wave of exhaustion wash over me. My knees buckled slightly, and I leaned against a nearby tree for support, gasping for breath. The shimmering motes of light that had once embodied our fears now drifted like whispers in the air, leaving behind a profound silence that felt almost sacred. Elara stood beside me, her face pale, eyes wide with a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We did it," she breathed, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "But at what cost?" I glanced down at my hands, now trembling, the remnants of adrenaline still coursing through my veins. The faint scars of the past were etched upon my skin, but they were also mirrored within me, emotional scars that would take much longer to heal. I could feel the lingering touch of darkness at the edges of my consciousness, a reminder that while we had faced our fears, the shadows were not entirely vanquished. The confrontation had changed us, and I was acutely aware of the weight of that change. "We faced it together," I replied, trying to summon a smile, but it felt strained. The truth was that the encounter had left its mark on both of us. I could see it in Elara's eyes, the way her brow furrowed with concern, how her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her shirt, a nervous habit she had developed during times of distress. This journey was altering us, and I could only hope that it would bond us rather than drive us apart. As we took a moment to gather ourselves, I glanced back at the archway, its shimmering outline flickering like a mirage. It felt like a threshold, not just between the forest and this strange realm, but also between who we once were and who we were becoming. I knew we had to move forward. Lingering in this moment would only unravel the hard-earned strength we had just discovered. "Let's keep going," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We can't let this be the end." Elara nodded, though there was a flicker of doubt in her gaze. What if there's more? What if that creature wasn't the only thing hiding in the shadows? The thought sent a chill through me. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we have to find out. Your brother? He's still out there somewhere. We can't give up on him." At the mention of her brother, Elara's expression shifted, a flash of determination igniting in her eyes. It was as if my words had stirred something deep within her, a resolve that had been overshadowed by fear. "You're right. We owe it to him to keep searching." We took a step forward, and as we did, the very ground beneath us shifted. The soft moss that had cushioned our feet began to ripple, revealing patterns, ancient symbols carved into the earth glowing faintly with a silver light. I crouched down, tracing one of the symbols with my fingers. It felt familiar, echoing the markings I had seen at the altar in the forest. "Do you think these mean something?" I asked, glancing up at Elara. "I think they're connected to whatever's happening here," she replied, her brow furrowing as she studied the patterns. "Maybe they're a map or a warning." The symbols seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward them. "What if they lead us to your brother?" I suggested, a flicker of hope igniting within me. As I spoke, I felt a sudden rush of energy, a whisper of warmth that coursed through my veins. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to connect with the symbols, and in that moment, Visions flooded my mind, flashes of light, shadowy figures, and a boy's laughter echoing through the twilight. I opened my eyes, breathless. I think they're showing us something." Ilara's eyes widened. "What do you see?" "Images of the forest, the altar again, but it's different this time. There's a light, a path. And I think I saw your brother. He's trapped in something?" Her face fell, the weight of my words heavy between us. "Trapped?" she echoed, a mixture of fear and determination etched into her features. "We need to save him." "Yes, but we need to be careful," I warned, feeling the remnants of the creature still lingering in my mind. "The darkness isn't gone, it's just waiting, watching." With a shared nod, we stepped deeper into the realm, following the trail of symbols that shimmered beneath our feet, leading us further into the unknown. The air grew thick with anticipation, and as we moved, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. A tension hung in the air, electric and charged, and I could sense the presence of something lurking just beyond our sight. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush made us both freeze. My heart raced as I turned, but it was only a small creature, an ethereal fox with fur that glimmered like starlight. It paused, its bright eyes locking onto mine, and I felt a strange connection, as if it were trying to communicate something important. "Ilara," I whispered, pointing toward the fox. "Look at it." She stepped closer, and the fox tilted, its head as if encouraging us to follow. "I think it wants us to go that way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's follow it," I urged, though a nagging doubt gnawed at me. The mysteries of this place deepened with every step, and I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. We trailed after the fox, weaving through the towering trees that seemed to whisper secrets among themselves. As we walked, the landscape shifted again, colors blending into a surreal tapestry of light and shadow. I could feel the remnants of the creature's darkness lurking like a specter just out of sight, and I couldn't help but wonder if we had truly escaped, or if we were merely entangled in a larger web of mysteries. After what felt like an eternity of following the fox, we arrived at a clearing, and my breath caught in my throat. In the center stood an ancient tree, its gnarled roots twisting into the ground like the fingers of a giant, its branches stretching toward the heavens. But what caught my attention were the figures that danced around the tree, shadowy silhouettes that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. "Are those spirits?" Ilara asked, her voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. "I think they are," I replied, my heart racing. "But why are they here?" Before I could ponder further, the ethereal fox bounded ahead, weaving through the shadows toward the ancient tree. I exchanged a glance with Ilara, and we followed, drawn by an inexplicable force. As we approached, the shadows began to coalesce, taking on more defined forms. Figures that looked remarkably like the inhabitants of the forest, faces twisted in expressions of anguish and longing. "Do you see that?" I whispered, my heart pounding. "They look like the people from the village." Ilara's eyes widened, realization dawning on her. "They're trapped here, just like my brother. This is what we need to confront." The air grew heavy, and I felt the shadows closing in around us, a reminder of the darkness we had just faced. "We need to find a way to help them," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. "But how?" the fox returned, its gaze steady, as if urging us to understand. "Maybe they're tied to the symbols," Ilara suggested, her mind racing. "If we can unlock the mystery of the symbols, we might free them." But as I looked at the figures, I knew that unlocking the mystery wouldn't be easy. The faces of the forest's lost souls were etched with pain, and I could feel their sorrow wrapping around us like a heavy cloak. It was a reminder that our journey was far from over. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "Let's do it," I said, determination fueling my resolve. "For your brother, for them, for us." As we stepped closer to the ancient tree, the shadows danced and flickered, and I realized that we were not just confronting the darkness, we were confronting our own pasts, the fears that had haunted us for too long. The echoes of our choices reverberated in the air, and I knew that whatever lay ahead would test us in ways we had yet to comprehend. Together, we stood at the edge of the unknown, ready to face the next chapter of our journey. The mysteries of the forest and the truths of our hearts awaited us, and with every step, we would uncover not just the fate of Ilara's brother, but the very essence of who we were and who we could become. And as we reached out to touch the ancient tree, the shadows began to swirl, pulling us into the depths of our own fears and desires, promising revelations that would change everything. As I reached out to touch the ancient tree, I felt a surge of energy pulse through my fingertips, reverberating up my arm and resonating deep within my core. The shadows danced before us, swirling like smoke escaping a fire, and for a moment, I was lost in their depths, seeing flickers of faces, of memories, my own fears manifesting into tangible form. Ilara stood beside me, her breath hitching as she took in the ethereal spectacle. The figures around the tree seemed to respond to our presence, their features shifting, morphing into expressions of hope and despair. I could feel the weight of their sorrow pressing down on us, and for an instant, I understood their plight. They were trapped, caught between worlds, yearning for freedom. "Let's do this together," I murmured, my resolve solidifying. "We can help them." With a steady hand, I placed my palm against the rough bark of the ancient tree. The moment I made contact, a jolt of warmth surged through me, and the world around us brightened. The symbols on the ground began to glow more intensely, illuminating the clearing with a silver light that pushed back the shadows. "Focus on the light," I called to Ilara, who mirrored my actions, her fingers brushing the tree's surface. "We need to channel our energy into it." The shadows flickered, swirling faster as if sensing our intentions. I closed my eyes, envisioning Ilara's brother, picturing him surrounded by light. I thought of the laughter we had shared, the dreams we had fought for. I poured every ounce of hope and determination into that image, feeling it intertwine with the magic of the tree. Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from the shadows, echoing through the clearing. I opened my eyes just in time to see a dark figure emerge from the depths, a twisted version of the creature we had faced before, its eyes burning with hatred. The presence surged forward, aiming for the tree, a desperate attempt to snuff out the light we were creating. "No," Ilara shouted, stepping forward, her voice strong and fierce. "You won't take them." In that moment, her fierce determination ignited something within me. I felt the connection to the spirits grow stronger, their cries blending with our resolve. Together we stood firm, channeling our energy, our fears, and our hopes into a radiant barrier that pushed back against the creature. The battle raged, light clashing against darkness as the shadows writhed in agony. I felt the weight of our past struggles, every fear, every doubt, colliding with the fierce light we were creating. Then, with a final surge of power, the shadows began to dissipate, and the air shimmered with a newfound clarity. As the creature let out a final roar, it was consumed by the light, and with a blinding flash, it vanished. The clearing fell silent, the oppressive darkness retreating as the spirits surrounding the tree began to coalesce, their features softening into serene expressions. "Ilara, look," I gasped, my heart racing. The figures were transforming, their forms becoming more solid, more human. I could see familiar faces, the villagers, the lost souls of the forest, and then a figure stepping forward that made my breath catch. "Ilara!" I shouted, pointing toward the figure that emerged from the gathering light. It was her brother, his features unmistakable, his eyes bright with recognition. "He's here!" Her face lit up with a mixture of disbelief and joy as she rushed forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Kian!" she cried, her voice breaking. "You're alive!" Kian stepped into the light, the shadows that had clung to him dissolving away. "Ilara!" he exclaimed, his arms wide open as she rushed into his embrace. The moment they held each other, A wave of warmth spread through the clearing, and the spirits around us began to fade, their expressions now peaceful. I took a step back, allowing the reunion to unfold, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over me. The forest, once thick with despair, now pulsed with hope and vitality. The shadows that had haunted us were retreating, leaving behind a serene brightness that filled the air. But just as I was about to turn away, I felt a tug at my heart, a pull from the tree itself. It whispered to me, a soft echo of ancient magic and stories untold. I approached it again, my fingers brushing against the bark, and I heard a voice, clear and resonant. Your journey is not yet finished. I looked back at Alara and Kian, who were lost in their own world of reunion, and then back at the tree. What do you mean? I whispered, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Darkness lingers still, hidden, but not gone. The balance is fragile. You must protect it. I hesitated, sensing the weight of responsibility settling over me like a cloak. What if I fail? The light within you is strong, the voice replied, echoing in my mind. Embrace it, for you are the guardian now. Before I could respond, the spirits began to dissipate, rising into the sky like fireflies. Alara and Kian stood together, watching the luminous forms fade, their expressions a mix of joy and sorrow. I felt the tree resonate with my heartbeat, a reminder that I was bound to this place, to these people, and to the stories that would continue to unfold. As the last spirit vanished, I turned back to Alara and Kian, who were now catching their breath. The forest felt alive, vibrant with the energy of both the past and the future. Did it work? Kian asked, his voice laced with wonder. More than we could have hoped, Alara replied, her gaze flicking between her brother and me, gratitude shining in her eyes. We're free, thanks to you. I smiled, but deep down, I felt the weight of the tree's words. But the darkness isn't gone. We have to stay vigilant. Kian nodded, a determined spark igniting in his gaze. Then we'll do it together. As we stood together in the clearing, I felt a sense of unity, a bond forged through fear, hope, and the promise of new beginnings. The shadows may have retreated for now, but I knew our journey was far from over. The forest would always hold its mysteries, and together we would face whatever came next. With the sun dipping low in the sky, casting golden hues through the trees, we began our walk back, the path illuminated by the remnants of light that lingered in the air. I sensed that our adventures were only just beginning, with stories yet to unfold and challenges yet to conquer. And as we walked, I couldn't help but feel a stirring in my heart, a whisper of something more, something waiting just beyond the horizon. The echoes of the past had shaped us, but the future beckoned, full of promise and possibility. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Share with your friends so they can also embark on this mystery-filled adventure. And leave a comment below telling us your favorite part or what kind of ending you'd like to see in a future story.